It's just an impossible situation to be in.
Over time, there's physical degradation. And the longer you leave something and let it deteriorate, the higher the cost will be to fix it up. So the cheapest maintenance is annual maintenance.
So Mark Thompson-Brandt says it's time to do the maintenance. And former Director of Communications for Stephen Harper, Andrew McDougall, agrees.
I would say to spend the money. You don't get credit for not spending the money, but you do get blame if the residence falls apart under your watch. And I think this is one where the loudest voices in the room aren't the right ones. I think the vast majority of Canadians want to have pride in the residence. They want to see an official residence that isn't rat-infested fire trap, which is what 24 Sussex is, sadly, now become. And it just takes a leader with a bit of confidence to go, look, we are a G7 country. We don't keep things together with Bondo and hockey tape, right? We should be able to have something that looks good and serves the purpose that we need it to serve.
The Office of the Minister responsible for the file said any decision on the future of 24 Sussex won't be taken lightly and will balance security, historic preservation, and sustainability. But they didn't say when it will happen.
Well, I just knew it was my grandfather's house, and it was, pretty...
Back in my cousin John Bogue's house, he's still got his memories of when his grandfather lived in 24 Sussex Drive.
These chairs were from Sussex Street.
Those chairs are from 24 Sussex?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Uh-huh. And there's a picture somewhere of my taking my first step, and I'm holding onto one of those chairs for support.
So given the politics of it all, if no decision is made, does that open up room for the previous owners to get it back? Do you think the Edwards should move back in?
I don't think we could afford it now.
That's all for Storylines this week. A short version of this documentary originally aired on The House. Today's episode was produced by me, Jennifer Chevalier, and edited by Storylines producer AC Rowe. The show is part of the CBC Audio Doc Unit. Join us next time, but for now, from me, goodbye.
This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world. Staying on top of stories around the globe. And connected close to home. It's news you can trust. Delivered when you want and where you want on Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1, local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon, I'm Rosanna Hempel in Winnipeg. At 12 o'clock, it's 19 degrees in Winnipeg. Showers today with risk of a thunderstorm, a high of 24. It'll feel like 28. The City of Winnipeg wants to make it easier to take vacant and derelict properties and turn them into affordable housing. Nonprofits looking to build housing could get more opportunities to buy city-owned property for cheap. As CBC's Cameron McLean reports, the city is also looking to acquire houses from owners who no longer want them.
Winnipeg has seen a number of buildings burned down and then sit as piles of rubble, sometimes for years. The costs of cleanup can be enormous. The city wants to give owners the chance to give up their properties before the tax sale process begins. It also wants to give nonprofits the opportunity to buy city property for as little as $1 anywhere in the city. Property and Development Chair Sherry Rowland says this would help speed up the process of redevelopment. It would also reduce costs for the city related to inspections, fire responses, and other associated costs. The Property Committee will vote on the recommendations tomorrow. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A 15-year-old boy has died after RCMP say he jumped out of a moving car in the RM of Grahamdale. RCMP say it happened on June 13th on Highway 6. Investigators say the boy was in a vehicle with 3 other young people when he reportedly opened the rear passenger door and jumped out. The vehicle was traveling at a high speed at the time. The teen from Pinemutang First Nation suffered severe injuries. He was transported first to a local hospital, then to Winnipeg, where he died of his injuries. The investigation continues. A 7-year-old girl drowned on the long weekend on the south side of God's Lake. RCMP were called to the area Sunday afternoon. A group of children between 5 and 12 had been swimming when the girl went under the water. The other children ran for help. An adult was able to pull the girl out and began first aid, but she was pronounced dead at the nursing station. RCMP are still investigating. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is refusing to say whether he'll call an urgent caucus meeting to discuss the loss of a Liberal stronghold in a Toronto by-election and whether the party needs new leadership.
Last week's by-election loss was challenging, something we need to take seriously. We've been engaged in important conversations. I've had lots of calls with different members of caucus from across the country, not just in the GTA, to talk about how we make sure we're continuing our work connecting with Canadians, to make sure we're continuing to deliver for people.
8 Liberal MPs sent a letter to the caucus chair requesting an urgent meeting to discuss what they called the extremely concerning by-election loss. 1 MP and 1 former cabinet minister have called on Trudeau to step down. As CBC News reported last week, Lieutenant General Jenny Carignan has been named the head of the Canadian Armed Forces. The federal government says Carignan will formally take command on July 18th, making her the first woman to serve as the senior commander of the Canadian military. She replaces retiring Defence Chief General Wayne Eyre. Hurricane Beryl is closing in on Jamaica. Residents are rushing to shelters as the Category 4 storm brings dangerous storm surges and forceful winds. CBC News spoke to reporter Zara Burton in Jamaica. She says the areas of Kingston and Clarendon will be hardest hit.
Everybody's just as ready as they can be. I mean, that's what our information center said. We're as ready as we're going to be. Whether that actually is true or not, I'm yet to see or yet to know. And you have to think about the cooperation of the people as well. Are the people cooperating with the government? So I went over and had a phone conversation with one of the local government officials in Clarendon just to ask him, what's the preparation like going on? And he said to me, there are still people who are not heeding the warning to evacuate and go to shelters, seek higher ground. And he said it's really disturbing because Clarendon has been hit in the past by hurricanes and it's been just devastating. So we don't know what the effect is going to be like. But what we can say to you is that while some people are heeding the warnings, others aren't.
Beryl is the strongest July hurricane on record in the Atlantic. Across the Caribbean, at least 6 people have been killed by the storm. Rescuers in BC are looking for a humpback whale that was last seen tangled in a net. The whale was spotted in the Salish Sea off Vancouver Island. CBC's Isaac Fanny has more on the search.
The 3-year-old humpback whale named Vector was last seen on Friday near Campbell River with rope wrapped around its dorsal fin and body. Fisheries and Oceans Canada says it's worried the fishing gear could kill Vector. Now they're looking to free it. Paul Cottrell is a marine mammals coordinator with DFO.
It's tight to the animal, so we're really concerned that this is going to be a difficult one.
He says entanglements are becoming more common. It happens in BC about 15 to 30 times each year. Jackie Hildring is the co-founder of the Marine Education and Research Society. She says it's a sign humpbacks are returning to the West Coast.
We're so fortunate that they've come back from the brink of extinction as a result of whaling. There's more on the coast. And what this means is there's a greater overlap with fishing gear and also vessel traffic.
DFO is asking anyone who spots Vector to call it in. Isaac Panay, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that is the CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local CBC News is at 12:30.
Hello, my friends. Thanks for joining us today for Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Janet Stewart. If you live with repeated painful headaches, we want to hear from you on today's call-in conversation. Our guest is a neurologist and headache expert who says stigma often makes migraine sufferers feel dismissed. What's your experience been? Call us with your stories and questions after 12:30. Today, you can even text 204-588-7355. What's it like to know your work contributed to the creation of a multi-billion-dollar industry? We'll find out at 12:15. But first, locally grown berries bring explosions of flavor imported berries can seldom even compete with. And now, they're ready. It's the time of year berry lovers hit the fields to fill baskets with fruit from a local U-pick farm. But with all the rain we've had, just how mucky will those fields be? Angie Cormier and her family run a U-pick called Cormier's Berry Patch in LaSalle, Manitoba. She joins us now by Zoom. Thanks for being with us, Angie.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you had hoped to open your U-pick for the season today, but decided to delay. Why?
We got some rain over the long weekend, and we are faced with logistical challenges with getting people into the field. And so we just thought maybe we need to just wait one more day, try to let the fields and the rows dry, and we will open tomorrow.
Logistical challenges. I love that. It means it's muddy as heck. Is that right? There's puddles and your fields would get rutted from cars, all that stuff.
Yes, it's just getting kind of from the parking lot to the field. Once you're in the rows, there is straw, but we've got some ruts from the tractors, so there is some water in some of the rows.
So what does all the rain we've had in the last little bit actually mean, though, for the crop you're growing?
You know, this spring, the amount of moisture that we've had and the cool weather has actually been ideal for growing fruit in Manitoba. So any of us that have strawberries, Haskaps, Saskatoons that are ready to be picked right about now, we've got big berries.
You're also... sorry, I cut you off there. What did you just say?
Sorry, no, big berries and lots of berries.
Big berries and lots of them. That sounds pretty lovely. You would know because you're also executive director of the Prairie Fruit Growers Association. And you've been hearing from growers in other parts of the province that everyone's doing well. Are there any areas where the crops aren't growing as bountifully?
As of right now, everybody that we have heard from are very happy with how their crops are.
Well, that's great news. We have seen inflation hit the cost of everything. What has that done to the cost of locally grown berries?
You will definitely see an increase in cost for pre-picked, U-picked berries because those farms have also experienced an increase in cost in running their operations.
Where have the biggest hits come from?
Labor. A lot of farms have teenagers that hire teenagers. So, the increase in minimum wage that will affect the cost of of getting berries. Plants, those of us that grow strawberries or raspberries, those plants come from Nova Scotia. The cost of plants have increased, and fertilizer has also increased. So all of our costs have increased.
So can you give us an example of what you'll be charging this season?
We will be charging $20 for a 4-liter U-pick basket and $30 for a pre-picked basket.
We often see imported strawberries sold by major chains for much less than what local growers sell berries for. How do you feel when you're going grocery shopping yourself and you see those relatively cheap berries for sale?
They're strawberries. You know, they're people are wanting to buy strawberries in the off season. We can't grow those in Manitoba in the winter time. They definitely do not taste anywhere near what fresh Manitoba berries taste like. So, you know, I think any of us that grow fruit here in Manitoba are very, very fortunate to have very excited Manitobans to pick fresh berries.
You don't ever end up with too many berries and not enough people willing to buy them. Is that right?
That is correct.
Oh, there you go. All right, let's talk a little U-Pick etiquette. Any rules or requests you would like to remind Manitobans of?
I think the biggest thing that all of us fruit growers want consumers to know is, you know, check the websites before you go to the farm. You know, weather can change the hours in an instant. So always check to see, you know, what the hours are and what do you need to bring. You know, do you need to bring rubber boots? You should definitely bring water if it's warm out. And don't pick the green berries.
Don't pick the green berries. Let them turn red for someone else. Okay.
Yes, or blue.
Or whatever color they're supposed to be.
Yes.
Angie Cormier, thanks for your time today. Best of luck with the season.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Angie Cormier and her family run a U-Pick called Cormier's Berry Patch in LaSalle, Manitoba, which opens tomorrow, dry conditions willing. She's also executive director of the Prairie Fruit Growers Association.
I wish I had the money or the guts just to change it up, she said. But I got bills that I do, and my courage just fell through again. Can't make up my mind, feeling smaller all the time, he said. 4 walls, 2 floors, 1 roof hanging over my head. Now we've talked for too long, and the sun's long gone. Will we stick to what we said? Really
Winnipeg's Brandon Post with Money and Guts. It is 12:17. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. My name is Janet Stewart. Still ahead today, hit the highway at the right time of year in Manitoba, and it won't be long until you pass seas of mustard-colored canola. It is a very valuable crop for Manitoba, thanks in large part to the groundbreaking work of food scientist Dr. Michael Eskin. Hear how he feels about his latest honor in just a couple of minutes. We are sitting under a mix of sun and cloud today. Really, not a lot of sun that I've seen. Chance of scattered showers again this afternoon. High temperature for Winnipeg of 24 degrees. Tomorrow, a risk of sun and clouds and a risk of late afternoon thunderstorms as well. 26 degrees. Friday, though, looks mainly sunny and 27, so break out the big hats and the sunscreen for that one. Saturday, increasing clouds, some sunny breaks, and still a chance of scattered late-day showers. Hopefully not enough to cancel your plans. Nice warm 26 degrees for that one. Sunday right now is looking like mainly cloudy with showers, 24 degrees. So who knows? This could be a summer to get some great reading done. Listen to all those great CBC podcasts, for example. Riley Lakechuck is our weather specialist who's been looking into this forecast for us and watches it as it changes. He'll be back at 12:30 after the news to tell us more about the Manitoba forecast. Our next guest has already been named to the Order of Canada and the Order of Manitoba. He's been elected by his peers as a Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada. And now, for his groundbreaking contributions to the early development of canola oil, distinguished professor Dr. Michael Eskin will be named to the Canadian Agriculture Hall of Fame. Michael Eskin is someone you've heard us speak with before from the Department of Food and Human Nutritional Sciences at the University of Manitoba, where he has that distinguished professor status. Thank you for joining us by Zoom.
My pleasure.
Sir, you are so highly respected in the world of food science. You've received so many fabulous and well-deserved accolades. What's special about being added to the Canadian Agriculture Hall of Fame?
Well, it's special in the sense when I came to Canada in 1968, to Manitoba, it was a perfect time because at that point, rapeseed was being developed for the conversion to canola. And I was pulled in by a wonderful colleague, the late Professor Marion Vasey-Genzer, who was a sensory specialist and my biochemist and food chemist. And she pulled me into it, and we were part of a team. And the other two people were the late Bruce MacDonald and the late Vivian Bruce, who were the nutritionists, and they did the feeding experiments. So there were the team of four. And I'm the last surviving member of that team. And I think that none of us appreciated the potential impact of that work that we were doing. And we worked with wonderful breeders, and it was really a team effort. And I'm forever grateful to being at the right place at the right time to participate in this, what really changed the agricultural landscape of Canada. Canada has been and is an important wheat producer, and rapeseed was not indigenous to Canada, and it was brought in by a Polish farmer in the 20s, or when he emigrated, and he was sent some samples of this rapeseed, and it grew well in Saskatchewan, where he came. And then the Second World War broke out, and the oil from rapeseed was a perfect lubricating for marine engines. There was nothing like it. And it was used in the Navy and for the commercial. And so there was a big growing process in Manitoba to grow it because of the U-boats and the restrictions in imports, and also that from Argentina, there's also a variety that was brought. And once, thankfully, the Second World War was successfully concluded, two things happened. First of all, the introduction of the diesel engine, so there was no need for such a lubricating oil, and it didn't have a great smell, and it had a composition that was not particularly considered beneficial. So someone in Agriculture Canada said, well, can one do anything with this crop? And it took from after the war to almost over 30 years before it was the final conversion took place. And I came in at that last crucial stage, which was really, looking back, it was really quite remarkable. And now there are 43,000 canola farmers in Canada, and it brings in over $30 billion a year annually to the Canadian economy, and it is the largest contributor in terms of agricultural produce. So it was an amazing opportunity.
One of the wonderful things about the chance to connect with you today via Zoom is I can see the smile on your face as you talk particularly about your teammates from way back when. That magical combination of brain power and questioning that brought you to this. Do you remember an aha moment when you realized that you could make this more nutritious and it wouldn't have, any negative things like rapeseed oil had, and it wouldn't smell as bad and it would taste better? Do you remember an aha?
There was a mixture of ahas, and in a sense that we knew that what happened is in the old rapeseed oil, there was something called erucic acid, which is C22(1), not desirable, and it made up between 40 to 70% of the total fatty acids. And that was changed. There's now less than 2%, even much less than that, in the canola oil. And you had serendipity, you had an oil that had the lowest saturated fat, less than 77%, and even less than that. And you had that contained about 60% what we call monounsaturated oleic acid, and then 20% linoleic, and 8 to 11% linolenic, omega-3. So there are not many plants that have high omega-3. Soybean does have, but it has a different composition. And when I came to Canada, there was they had this PS ratio for cholesterol. You needed so many more polyunsaturates to saturates to reduce cholesterol. And there was a real error in that calculation because it ignored the monounsaturates. And they have been shown to be very significant in lowering. And plus you had the balance between the omega-3 and the omega-2, which is linolenic and linoleic, which made it a perfectly heart-healthy oil. So we knew in terms of the composition and that we had something that was quite extraordinary. And what happened was that I was commissioned with the late Professor Marion Vasey-Genzer to write a booklet on the properties and the beneficial effects of the oil and the work that we had done and the group had done. And it was sent around to nutritionists and food industry throughout the world. And there were 5 revisions. I think it was translated into Japanese, German, and French. And that really set the path for its worldwide acceptance. And
you wrote not only that booklet explaining the nutritional benefits of this canola oil, you've also been writing songs for quite a while. You wrote one for Sesame Street, which I couldn't find, and as a Sesame Street fan from birth, I have to tell you, I'm very impressed. But we do have some of your music. This is something you wrote and performed for your students about fat-soluble vitamins.
A, D, E, and K, we need them every day. We need them every day. The fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, are needed in our diet. Keep us healthy every day. You only need a small amount. Too much is bad for you. So limit.
Sir, why? That's so fun that you did that for your students. What a great way to teach them to remember things, give them an earworm. Are you still writing songs?
I have actually a protein wrap that we've done. It's been, the video is being finished. And in that, I had to get a costume for a vampire because I'm talk a little bit about blood proteins, and of course without the blood, Hollywood could never make those vampire movies that really scare.
That's right, and that is the key to those. You've had such a life, sir. Is there anything you haven't done that you've wanted to? Didn't you want to be an opera singer at one point? Did I read that somewhere? I did have classical, and I thought I'd be the short tenor that would die in the arms of the rather large soprano. But I have done some performances and have a recording with them. This becoming a rap artist was not something that I had any intention of doing. But the first one I did was lipids get a bad rap, it isn't fair. And then I've sort of done a number of songs. One of my favorite ones is I'm reviewing the situation on how every new nutritional fad is spread by those nuts who love fitness and never ever seem to go to bed. You won't see them at Claridge's, they're too busy chewing cabbages, doing aerobics day and night in outfits that are far too tight. They only drink raw carrot juice, and if you stray, you're in a noose. I think I better think it out again. Dr. Michael Eskin, thank you so much for everything you've done and for singing for us today. Congratulations on your induction into the Canadian the Canadian Agriculture Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Have a wonderful day. Michael Eskin will be formally inducted into the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame November 2nd at a ceremony in Ontario. It is 12:29. That means it's time to open our phone lines for our calling conversation today. We're talking about migraines, and we have a doctor with us, a neurologist and headache expert. What questions do you have? What stories do you have of how your life or the life of someone you love has been impacted by migraines? Call us now, 204-780-0893. If you prefer to text, although we'd love to hear your beautiful voice too, you can text us at 204-588-7355. It's 12:30, so the news is next.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon, I'm Rosanna Hempel in Winnipeg. At 12:30, it's 20 degrees in Winnipeg. Showers today with risk of a thunderstorm, a high of 24. The City of Winnipeg wants to make it easier to take vacant and derelict properties and turn them into affordable housing. Nonprofits looking to build housing could get more opportunities to buy city-owned property for cheap. As CBC's Cameron McLean reports, the city is also looking to acquire houses from owners who no longer want them.
Winnipeg has seen a number of buildings burn down and then sit as piles of rubble, sometimes for years. The costs of cleanup can be enormous. The city wants to give owners the chance to give up their properties before the tax sale process begins. It also wants to give nonprofits the opportunity to buy city property for as little as $1 anywhere in the city. Property and Development Chair Sherry Rowland says this would help speed up the process of redevelopment. It would also reduce costs for the city related to inspections, fire responses, and other associated costs. The Property Committee will vote on the recommendations tomorrow. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A 7-year-old girl drowned on the long weekend on the south side of God's Lake. RCMP were called to the area Sunday afternoon. A group of children between 5 and 12 had been swimming when the girl went under the water. The other children ran for help An adult was able to pull the girl out and began first aid, but she was pronounced dead at the nursing station. RCMP are still investigating. A 77-year-old man from BC has died after the motorcycle he was driving was rear-ended on Highway 13. It happened on June 25th, just after 9 in the morning. Carmen RCMP say the motorcycle was driving north on the highway when a vehicle also going north rear-ended him. The 21-year-old driver of the other vehicle from Carmen was not injured. The motorcycle driver died in hospital. Some southern Manitoba farmers say it's a mudfest out there. Canada Day was one of the wettest in nearly 60 years. Much of the Red River Valley, including Winnipeg, had more than 30 millimeters of rain. Rainfall in May was double the normal amount, and June was also wetter than usual. Curtis McRae farms north of Winnipeg in St. Andrews.
Roads have been difficult. Fields have been difficult. Luckily, we've actually had a tractor that was available just to have a tow rope on it all the time to have access to an extra pull whenever we got stuck. So we've been getting our PhDs and unstucking tractors this year.
McRae says crops are yellowing because they can't handle all the moisture. He worries about fungus. He may have to hire an aerial sprayer to treat his crops because it's so wet. That is the CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local CBC News is at 1:30.
Thank you so much, Rosanna Hempel.
You're welcome.
Our weather specialist, Riley Laychuk, joins us now. Hello, Riley.
I feel like I maybe wore the wrong attire today.
Because I don't see I see a T-shirt. Let's see. I'm looking under the desk. Shorts and sandals.
Shorts and sandals today.
Okay, well, you're dressing as if it's July 3rd.
Exactly.
And how do you think perhaps you should be dressed?
So we are looking at some scattered showers. We're kind of hanging on to this cloud cover almost with dear life here in southern Manitoba for some reason.
I'm willing to let it go.
Yeah, I know I am too. There's some clearing to the west and slowly to the north. So we will see some sunny breaks as we get through the afternoon. Give it a few hours. Give it a few hours. A few scattered showers even making their way through the Interlake and through the White Shell into northwestern Ontario. So once we kind of get done with that, we'll be back into the sunshine here in the Red River Valley. As mentioned, a lot sunnier back to the west already. So I'm calling it a mix of sun and clouds this afternoon, even though we might not actually see the sun until we get later into the afternoon, with a couple of raindrops here and there. So we'll keep our eye out for that. That clears out as we get through the night tonight. Partly cloudy night, overnight tonight. We're looking at a mix of sun and clouds in the morning. Very slim chance we could see a few more raindrops, especially into the late afternoon, early evening. We're looking at temperatures warming up into the high 20s. Recipe for thunderstorms as we get into the late afternoon tomorrow. So that's why I say we could see a few scattered showers, maybe some isolated thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon. As I always say, doesn't mean there's going to be a thunderstorm everywhere, but the potential is there for something to kind of pop up late afternoon tomorrow. Friday, under the influence of high pressure, mainly sunny skies, really province-wide is what we're looking like right through into early Saturday as well. Rainfall for the next 24 hours, really hit and miss. I only mention that just because we could see some higher pockets if you end up in one of these thunderstorms, sort of traced to a couple millimeters, if that, generally across sort of the Red River Valley into eastern Manitoba through the day today. Looking at temperatures in Winnipeg, 24 this afternoon, 24 in Brandon, Melita, Verdun, 25 in Dauphin this afternoon, 23 mainly sunny in Thompson, and Churchill looking at a high of 12 under a mix of sun and clouds. So kind of a little bit all over the place temperature-wise, but we're really going back up toward and exceeding seasonal, Janet, as we get into the next few days. Tomorrow I have us at 26 degrees in Winnipeg, 27 for Friday. Chance of some late-day showers through the late afternoon Saturday with a high of 26 and 24 with a few showers on the way for Sunday.
Riley, thanks so much for
No
this.
problem.
Riley Laychuk is not only our weather specialist, he'll also be hosting CBC Winnipeg News at 6 tonight. But before he stops following the weather, he'll be on Up to Speed with me this afternoon. I'll be hosting Up to Speed today between 3 and 6 p.m. Riley will join us then to update the forecast, and then he takes over CBC Winnipeg News at 6. We're just a big family who shuffles around and everybody covers everything here at CBC Manitoba. Luckily, I have the option now of talking to you, Manitoba. If you're a migraine sufferer, if you love someone who is, we want to hear what that's like. Migraine Canada says 12% of Canadians live with migraines or other headache-related conditions. If you're one of them, give us a call, 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. Now, today we're also introducing the option to send us a text, 204-588-7355. Our guest today, joining us by Zoom, is Dr. Werner Becker. He is Professor Emeritus of Clinical Neurosciences and Medicine at the University of Calgary. He's founder of the Calgary Headache Assessment and Management Program. He's on the board of Migraine Canada, and he's a Manitoban from Marquette. Thank you so much for joining us by Zoom today, sir.
You're welcome.
What I'd like to do now is encourage people again to give us a call if you want to share your experiences with migraine or ask a question of Dr. Becker. Again, the number is 204-780-0893. By text, 204-588-7355. Anyone who listens to our information radio morning show here on CBC Manitoba knows Abby Adeyemi. He's a CBC studio technician and reports weather information as well, so you'll know his voice. He's lived with migraines for more than 20 years, and he explained to me earlier today just what they feel like to him.
Just imagine you have a helmet on your head and it's closing in on you continuously. It's like I'm feeling either my brain is being enlarged and squishing against the skull, or the skull in there is shrinking, and it's like my eyes wants to pop, My brain is just sending out heat waves. There's something pulling from the front of my head all the way back there, and I feel nauseous. I want to throw up. I can't throw up. I feel some indigestion. Everything just hits me at the same time, just because of the sensation happening in the head, and then my eyes just continuously twitches, and I'm like, okay, I don't think I can do this anymore.
Dr. Becker, you're nodding as you listen to that. What was going through your head?
Well, it sounds pretty intense, doesn't it? And you'll notice that it's more than a headache. There's nausea with it, quite severe nausea. That's migraine. Now, migraine can take many different forms. Not everybody experiences that kind of pressure sensation that he described. They do differ from person to person, but they can be pretty bad.
They can be pretty bad. Let's see if our next caller agrees with you. Jane is on the line. Hi, Jane. Thanks for calling Radio Noon.
Oh, good afternoon, and thank you for holding such a very important topic today. I just want to share with your guests and listeners that for decades, since I was a young child, I had migraines. I feel that I probably lost 3 to 5 years of life from having to be in dark rooms, not being able to go to school, to work, and so on. But interestingly enough, when I was diagnosed with lymphoma, Burkitt-like lymphoma, 20 years ago, they disappeared as I was getting all my chemo treatments. And interesting as well is that a friend of mine I finished mine, she was starting hers for lymphoma. All of us patients were invited to Cancer Care Manitoba, and the facilitator of this meeting was Dr. Rubinger. And we're discussing all the different symptoms that so many of us have had, and of course they weren't all alike. But one thing that my friend and I realized is we haven't had those headaches. And wow, is this what it took to get rid of them? And as we brought this to everyone's attention, so many people in that room raised their hands and said they had the same experience. We never did get an answer of why, but it just seemed perhaps the chemo just went that deep into our bodies to wherever this was a weakness, if that you can call it, where the migraine started. But thank goodness it did, because many of us survived the treatment, the disease, and we are living a great life because we don't even have those headaches.
Oh, Jane, I'm so happy for you. Thank you so much for sharing your story today on Radio Noon. Okay, Dr. Becker, do you have an answer to why surviving chemotherapy treatments, having lymphoma, going through all that, might disrupt a migraine pattern?
Well, I have to admit that despite many decades working in the headache field, this is the first time I've had a cancer survivor tell me that chemotherapy cured their headaches. And it sounds like, from what you said, this is not actually that unusual. So that's very interesting. Migraine does have an inflammatory component to it. And the pain seems to come from the linings over the brain, the dura, that gets inflamed. Then there are inflammatory cytokines, molecules released. So it may well be that the chemotherapy dampens that down and makes the migraine unable to generate the attacks in the usual way. It's a very interesting observation. I'm speculating. I don't really have an answer for you.
And we're going to come back to that, because one of the things that fascinates me is that someone with your expertise, who spent a career studying this, still has questions. There's still so much about migraines we don't understand. I'm going to play a call that we got a little earlier today from Denise. Here it is.
This is Denise. Yeah, this topic of migraines, my husband is at work right now, so I'm kind of calling on his behalf. He suffers very much so from weather-related migraines, and it's just been horrible to watch because there's pretty much nothing he can do about it. He was given a prescription for some migraine medication that he finds does help. However, even with being blessed and fortunate enough to have some insurance, the cost of those pills is still expensive even with the insurance that we have. So that presents a challenge for us, let alone for anyone who doesn't have insurance. It's really hard, and we've tried to look into things like acupuncture or acupressure points, things that might help to alleviate some of that pain for him. But so far we haven't had much success finding any alternative to the medication that he's been prescribed. So it is really hard. And when it's like someone with an arthritic like knee or hip where they can tell you when it's going to rain. He always knows when the rain is coming the day before, sometimes 2 days before, because he'll start to get that pressure headache. And it's quite debilitating. And it's really unfortunate. I know people deal with more serious things, but it does definitely affect your daily life and your ability to function when you do have those headaches. It's definitely a thing. There's something there. So please be patient with those ones who suffer, because it is really hard for them.
So much to unpack there, sir. Okay, Dr. Becker, the weather-related thing. Abby Adiemi, my colleague here at CBC, told me today, barometric pressure, absolutely. He can tell that he's getting a headache, and that makes it worse. I've heard the same thing from many, many people. Denise's husband would say the same thing, and yet it's not scientifically proven. Why not?
Well, there are a few reasons. But first of all, I agree with you that all over the world, people with migraine, and many of them blame weather changes for triggering their headaches. So many migraine patients are weather sensitive, but not all would seem. It's been hard to prove because most migraine patients will have a number of triggers, weather being one of them. So if you try to do some statistical correlations, it gets difficult to make it significant with just one of those triggers. Furthermore, there probably are many things that happen with weather changes that can trigger headaches, and patients are sensitive to different ones. For example, in Calgary, we did show that the Chinook winds certainly make headaches more likely, migraine headaches more likely in some patients. But even with the Chinooks, it seemed that half the patients who are weather sensitive were sensitive to the barometric pressure changes on the pre-Chinook day, and half were sensitive to the wind itself, but only if the wind exceeded 38 kilometers an hour. And we think probably that's because when the wind gets that strong, you have a big increase in positive ions in the air, and those may be the trigger for those patients.
All the dust that's being swept up.
Exactly. So weather changes are complicated. They're often hard to pinpoint exactly when they happen. with the Chinooks, we were lucky because Chinooks can come on very abruptly. So you have a time point where you can sort of do correlations with the patient's diaries and headache onset. But other weather changes aren't quite that distinct. So it's a very complicated area, but yes.
So many factors and variables, and in science, you want to be sure, right? You want science, you want certainty to be able to say A causes B, and that's still not easy when a lot of things, come into play with migraine. Brenda is standing by. Sorry, sir. Brenda's standing by. Brenda, are you with us today? Thanks for calling Radio Noon, Brenda.
I am. Hi. Yeah, you're having this. I've been suffering with migraines for about 4-5 years. Never had them before. But what I wanted to, when I have a question, I'll try to do this quickly. I am on a medication called Ajovy. It is helping, but the problem is I also get plasma exchange. And the plasma exchange one of the side effects is it can take out some of the medication in my system. So I guess the last time I had plasma, I didn't wait long enough between my injection of the Ajovy and the plasma treatment. And I had like 3 or 4 days of killer headaches. And then they've kind of settled down. But my question is, there is migraine, like sort of a temporary migraine medication like triptan. And I take rizatriptan. But my doctor said I can only take it up to 8 to 10 times a month. Well, I get migraines every day. Why aren't there more medications for people that get migraines every day?
That's an excellent question, Brenda. What do you think, sir? You had mentioned something to me about the fact that you can overtake medication, and that's a problem.
Yes, you have a good doctor. If you take the triptans or almost any medication meant for treating individual attacks too frequently, that can lead to medication overuse headache and more headache. And with the triptans, it's about 9-10 days. So your doctor is right. What you need is more prevention, preventative medications, and that's where the Ajovy is a good one. But you have this unusual situation where your paresis takes it out. So I would suggest you consider a couple of other alternatives. For example, there's a medication that's a bit like Ajovy called atogepant. Trade name is Quilipta. It does what Ajovy does, more or less. It's a bit different, but it's similar. And it's an oral medication you take every day. So you wouldn't have this issue of getting it removed by your other treatment. Also, of course, if you haven't done it, you may consider onabotulinum toxin A, also known as Botox, which is another migraine preventive for people like you that have migraine every day. And again, it shouldn't be removed the way the Ajovy is by your other treatments.
Brenda, thank you so much for calling Radio Noon. I hope that advice is helpful. Joey is standing by. Is Joey still on line 1? Joey, are you there? Nope, we've lost Joey on line 1. We do have a question. Well, I have a question. We were talking about medication. We heard from Denise earlier that hers is very, very, very expensive, her husband's medication. Why are they so expensive?
Well, newer medications for migraine are expensive. No question about that. And of course, that's true for newer medications for other conditions as well. I mean, first of all, these medications are complicated. Ajovy is a monoclonal antibody, which is a very specific medication, and so it required a lot of research.
Right, and that's big pharma, and they've got to pay for that R&D somewhere, that research and development, right? And
now, whether they're charging whether they need to, I'm not one to say. There's a lot of research, there are a lot of expenses, a lot of medications get a lot of research and never get to market because something turns up. For some reason, they have some side effect and they have to stop the development. So they're expensive. And I just wanted to mention that with the weather issue, if one thing you could try in that situation, if you know you're going to get a migraine in the next 24 hours, is you could try taking something simple and inexpensive like naproxen. It's a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medication. Assuming you have no contraindications, you haven't got a stomach ulcer or something like that, you could take naproxen twice a day for a day or two around that time of vulnerability and see if you can, reduce those attacks. Now, again, naproxen is a medication for individual migraine attacks, so you really can't take it on more than in this case, about 14 days a month, or else you risk making the migraine worse. But if the weather changes aren't that frequent, then that might be worth a try.
It might be worth a try. Joey has a question for us. Joey, thanks for calling us on Radio Noon.
You're welcome.
What's your question?
Quick question. Have you ever noticed anything with correlation with scent allergies? I have some scents that I'm more sensitive to than others, but hazelnut coffee, that if somebody's drinking like a hazelnut flavored coffee, that triggers an instant migraine. I'm finished for the day.
What do you think, Dr. Becker? Have you ever heard of scent triggers?
So, if I heard correctly, you're asking whether certain smells can trigger headaches. Or
some people are scent sensitive. Can that be connected to migraine?
Oh yeah, certainly. I've seen patients over the years who they get into an elevator with someone who's wearing a lot of perfume. They know they'll get a migraine. So there certainly are scent triggers. Now, I think you mentioned a number of things, including certain kinds of coffee, I think.
Yeah, it was a scented flavored coffee, so it would smell like hazelnut. And there's something in that triggers migraine in Joey.
Yeah, I think there are migraineurs who are sensitive to smells, no question about that. The usual culprit is strong perfumes, but it could be other scents as well. Now, there also are food triggers. So maybe some of the stuff you're describing is a food trigger if you're actually drinking or eating this stuff.
We received a text, our first text. Thank you for texting in. And the question really is about concussion. Could concussion at an early age make you predisposed to migraine?
Yes, it could. And later in life, if you have migraine intermittently, a few attacks a month, concussion can make that a lot worse and convert you into even a daily headache sufferer.
There are so many variables, and we got a call as well from Pam, who's asking about some hormone changes. Let's go to that call from Pam.
Hi, my name is Pam. I suffer from migraines all my life, from about puberty, I would say, until recently, and I'm heading into menopause. So I'm interested in what the doctor might say about the effect of hormones and the changes over the course of a menstruating person's life. So we're talking about when I was in my teens, I had half the side of your head, the migraine classic. The doctor was like, well, your grandfather had them, so it's probably hereditary. That was what I was told. And then later in life, after I had my first child, the migraines got much worse, and I started having visual auras where you get a jagged, zigzaggy line on one side of one of my eyes. You could close your eyes and see a bright white zigzag pattern. And then when you open your eyes, it was like there was when you stare at the sun and you get the after image of the sun in your eyes, briefly even, it would stay in your eye for a good 20 seconds. Well, a good 10 minutes. And then after that, you knew that you were going to have a headache, is what I found. And the glamour in your eye would go away, and then you just had a massive migraine. And then, as I'm heading into menopause, the reality is, or perimenopause, I've had fewer and fewer migraines. Now, maybe I'm taking better care of myself and eating more regularly and making sure that I'm less stressed because I'm trying to deal with menopause. But on the other hand, it seems like maybe there's a trigger there with hormones.
So, Dr. Becker, what do we know about hormonal changes and migraine?
Yes, hormonal changes in women can very much affect their migraines, and many women will get their first migraine at puberty, and then they go on from there. Now, pregnancy will often relieve migraines to a large extent because although estrogen levels go very high, they're stable. They don't fluctuate as much during pregnancy. So they are important, and many women do have a lot of trouble at perimenopause time. But once menopause happens, then they often lose their migraines. Now, not all. Some women maintain their migraines until their 80s and 90s, but the majority of women do lose their migraines after menopause. So hormones are very important. And of course, some women will have their worst migraines or even their only migraines with just before their period, when estrogen levels are dropping. So they're a big deal.
Migraines are a big deal. And there are people listening who may be trying to suffer through it. What would you say to them?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, see your doctor, and if necessary, get referred to a specialist who's interested in headache, because there are a lot of treatments available, and some of them are expensive, obviously. We discussed that. But a lot can be done to help people with migraine. Also, become knowledgeable, become educated. Go to the Migraine Canada website, do some homework. There's a lot you can do with your migraines without medications as well. Get a migraine-friendly lifestyle. Don't skip meals. Get regular sleep. Learn some good stress management skills. That'll help you. It won't eliminate your migraines, because migraines are basically genetic. They're inherited, but how many migraines you'll have in your life if you have those genes depends a lot upon many things, including your environment and your lifestyle. And finally, don't just rely upon common painkillers. Even acetaminophen, which doesn't work very well for migraines, can give medication overuse headache if you take it too often. Too often being somewhere around, in the case of acetaminophen, about 13, 14 days a month of use. So get some good advice from the health professionals, educate yourself, and make the effort to work, to learn about what you can do from a non-medication point of view.
Dr. Werner Becker, thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your expertise with us.
You're very welcome.
Dr. Werner Becker was our guest today, a Manitoban who is Professor Emeritus of Clinical Neurosciences and Medicine at the University of Calgary. To comment on anything you heard here today, 204-788-3797. Thank you all for joining us today. Tomorrow we're talking about how to be a good guest, cottage etiquette, tomorrow on Radio Noon. I'll talk to you a little later today on Up to Speed. I'm Janet Stewart. Have a fabulous Wednesday.